Welcome, everybody. My name is Jace Mathias, and I work for the state of North Dakota. I'm an information technology specialist with EduTech, which is the Educational Services Division within North Dakota Information Technology. NDIT is doing whatever possible to ensure that the entities we support are able to function in a wide variety of situations. For K-12 schools, we know our North Dakota administrators and educational personnel are carefully navigating how to proceed with classes, communication, and collaboration while addressing concerns around COVID-19. EduTech's mission remains to provide technology services and leadership to improve teaching and learning in North Dakota PK through 12. We are continuing that mission by providing this webinar series and are here to support our North Dakota K-12 community with support, training, and resources. Also in this webinar with me today is Rob Schaefer. He'll be able to answer any questions that you guys have that come up during the training. Again, if you hover your cursor over the Teams screen, you should have the option to show the conversation. You can feel free to type any questions that you have into that conversation. If it's something that Rob can address at the time, he'll respond back to you, or if it's something that you want to see on my screen again, he'll make a note of it, and we'll make sure we give you the opportunity to get any questions that you have answered as we go through our webinar today. This is part of a webinar series. This webinar will be recorded and posted to the education, or the EduTech YouTube channel. All the webinars that we're doing that are part of this series will also be there as well. So feel free to check out that site and look at any or watch any of the webinars that we've done in the last week or that we're going to have coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'll give you some information towards the end about how you can access that site. Also, I want to make sure that you know that by watching this webinar live with us today, it is available for EduTech hours. You can build EduTech hours up to eventually turn into one continuing ed credit from NDSU. If you have 15 EduTech hours, you can turn that in for 1 credit. I want to make sure I give everybody credit for being here today that I possibly can. So if you are joined as a guest today, if you would please, inside of that conversation bar, type in your name and your K-12 email address so I can give you credit. I also have created a Microsoft form. On the screen right now is the bit.ly for that. I'll also type that into the conversation bar as well. But if you would go and sign into that form, it basically just asks you for your name, your K-12 email address, and the school district that you're a part of. That way I can make sure I give you credit for attending this training for us today. The bit.ly does have a time limit on it, so if you're watching it today, will expire at midnight tonight. So if you could get in sometime today and fill that out so I can keep track of you. If you're watching the recorded version of this, unfortunately that web link will have a timeout for it. But if you can make sure you at least give me your contact information so I can get you added to make sure that you get the credit for being part of this today. All right, today's webinar, we're going to explore some learning tools that are currently built into the Office 365 applications that you guys already have access to. Every teacher and student in North Dakota has a K-12 email account, and the tools that we're going to show you today, everybody currently does have access to them. One thing to make sure that you're paying attention to as you're starting to create assignments that you're going to push out to your students or other resources that you're going to make available to them in an online platform is that we're considering the needs of the students that we have that are on IEPs. CETA, the State Educational Technology Directors Association, does provide some guidance about how to make sure that the content you're creating for your students is acceptable. And they have created a coalition for e-learning that's available for everybody to use. And I'm going to jump out to that right now. I'm going to go to the CETA website for you, so you can kind of see what they have available. The website is just setda.org. Rob will add that into the chat so you have that for easy access. But if you go to the CETA website, ceta.org, on their main page, they have the CETA Coalition for E-Learning. CETA is starting to put together some resources that teachers can use in their classrooms. North Dakota is a part of CETA, but if I click on that CETA E-Learning Coalition link, down the right-hand side of the page are some easy links that are going to provide some resources for you. The two that I'll mention specifically are partner resources. This is a list of other companies that have partnered with CETA to make their resources available. Some of the resources here are free always for teachers to use. Some of these resources are going to be things that companies have made available for free now for the next few months because of the online learning situation that we found ourselves in. But all of the resources that CETA links here are vetted by CETA for privacy and security concerns, so they are safe for you to use in your classroom. Today, we're going to focus on some of the accessibility resources that CETA has kind of directed people to make sure that we are supporting our students with IEPs during these online learning days, right? They do have some kind of getting started guides and some guidance for administrators, special education teachers, general education teachers. You can kind of read through some of that stuff on your own. They do have some getting started guides, how to create accessible documents, making sure that you can get started creating accessible presentations. And then they also provide some websites and tools that you can use to make sure that your documents are going to be accessible. Some of these are on the teacher side, some of them are on the student side. For example, I'll click on the link here, personalizing the reading experience. We're going to focus a lot today on some things that we can use in this regard. Most of these links do come from the National Center on Accessible Education Materials, and they provide guidance on how to create the documents, but they'll also link to certain software applications or different programs that you can use to do things like turn text to speech, right? That's a big thing for some struggling readers out there. They link you to some software solutions that you could explore, how you can do text to speech on iOS devices, Android devices inside of Google Chrome. But these are all things that are currently built into the Office 365 suite that you guys have available to you right now. So that's what we're going to kind of focus on. We're going to jump in. We're going to take a look at some of the things that already exist in our Office 365 apps, and we'll kind of play around and you can find out for sure what is there. Now I'm going to jump back into my PowerPoint presentation. And the next slide that I have for you, these are the tools that we're going to spend most of our time looking at today. The graphic that I have up there for you now is the periodic table of Microsoft Learning Tools. If you look down the left-hand side, these are all of the tools that Microsoft has made available inside some of their applications. And then the rest of the document shows what applications each of these tools are available in. All right, the first 8 on the list, from read aloud and word line highlighting all the way down to translation, those first 8 tools are all part of something that's called the Immersive Reader. So we're going to focus on that. But you can see those 8 tools, the Immersive Reader is available in lots of different Microsoft programs. We're going to focus today on the online versions of these programs. One thing that Microsoft has done is they've created the Immersive Reader, but they also want to make it available to as many people as possible. Right? They want to have this available for free. So if you're a student or a teacher, you have access to it. But not just that. If you're just somebody else that's in the community, they do have a way for these resources to be available for you as well. And I'll just kind of walk you through that a little bit. But we're going to get into our Office 365 account. Most of you know, if you go to the website office.com, doesn't matter what web browser you're using, what kind of device, anywhere in the world, if you go to office.com and click sign in, you're going to be able to sign into your K-12 account, right? So now you would enter your email address, you click next, it's going to redirect you to the North Dakota site, you put in your password, then you're going to get into Office 365. But again, as I mentioned, these tools, specifically the Immersive Reader, are available for free. And the way that you can do that is you can turn any email address into an Office 365 account for free. So if you do not currently have a Microsoft account, maybe you have parents in your communities that would be interested in getting access to this, under no account, if they click on create one, that will allow them to turn any email account into an Office 365 account. For example, I have a Gmail account that also doubles as an Office 365 account. So using that Gmail account, I can get access to all these tools. If I have an email account that came maybe from my internet service provider, I can also use that to turn into an Office 365 account and get access to some of these tools. You can also use a phone number instead. If you don't want to tie an email address to an Office 365 account, you can use a phone number. Or if you just want to start from scratch, if you want to get a brand new account that's free, there's nothing tied to it, but gives you access to some of these Office 365 tools, you can click on Get a New Email Address. You pick the front end of the email address, and as long as that's not taken by somebody else, you can use it. And then that email address will be created at Outlook.com or at Hotmail.com. Or maybe even you have a Hotmail account that you created 20 years ago and you didn't even realize that Hotmail was still around. It does exist. Microsoft owns it. Those Hotmail accounts are now Office 365 accounts. But that will give you access to Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote, the online versions. All of these things in the Immersive Reader live in the online versions, and that's how we're going to demonstrate them for you today. All right, so I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to jump into my Office 365 account. This is my dashboard. Again, most of these apps do have some of these learning tools built into them. Outlook does, Word, PowerPoint, OneNote, Teams, Forms, and I'll give you some examples of all of those things as we move through today. But I'm going to start in the online version of Microsoft Word. I have a document that's open already here for you. This is a text document, the Gettysburg Address. Now, you can follow along on my screen as I kind of show you some of these things, but if you want to see them in person, open up a document on your computer, something that's going to be really text heavy with a lot of text in it. You can kind of explore these tools as we go through them, and you can see what they're going to look like on your computer. You can figure out how they're going to work for you. But inside of my document, the Gettysburg Address here, text heavy, I'm going to click on the View tab across the top in the ribbon on Microsoft Word. I'm going to click on View, and the second option in is the Immersive Reader. Again, these are available, the Immersive Reader, some of these tools are available in some desktop versions of these apps, but I'm just going to show you in the web version. The nice thing with the web versions, it doesn't matter what browser you're using, doesn't matter what type of device you are on, whether it's a Chromebook, a Mac, or a PC, all of these things are going to look exactly the same. But when I click on Immersive Reader, it's going to take my text Gettysburg Address document and send it to the Immersive Reader. And you can tell right off the bat, it just looks a little bit different, right? It kind of spreads the text out a little bit more. It's going to make things a little easier for us to read. It changes the font. You'll notice in my case, the background of the document even changed. But the first thing that we're going to look at down at the bottom of the screen, you have the little play button. Right? If you click on the play button, this is going to be our built-in text-to-speech option. All right, hopefully you guys are able to hear that on your computer, but all I had to do was press the play button, and now my screen reader kicked in. It started to read the document for me, right? So now if I'm a struggling reader, I can read along with the voice. I do have some options to change that speech a little bit. I can click on the little speaker icon, and I have a few voice settings that I can modify. I can change the speed of the voice. I can speed it up or I can slow it down. And then I can also toggle back and forth between a female voice or a male voice. If one of those voices is easier for me to listen to and understand, I can make that change right here, right? But that's the automatic text-to-speech option, right? That's probably one of the best tools that's built in, but that just kind of gets us started in the Immersive Reader. There are some other options we can find up here in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. There are three icons. The first icon, these little two A's right here, these are our text preferences. So if I click on the text preferences, there are some other things that I can change. I can make the font size bigger or smaller to make the document easier to read, right? So I can manipulate that a little bit. The next feature is increase spacing. If I turn this on, it's actually going to increase the space between letters, between words, and even between the lines of the text. So I'll increase the spacing. It spreads things out to make it even a little bit easier to read for me now. I also have some font options. There are 3 different fonts I can pick from to find out which font is going to be the easiest for me to see and read and follow along with. And then I also have themes. There are 21 different themes that are built in, so I can change the background color of the page to whatever is going to be the easiest for me to read. Right? What's going to be the easiest on my eyes? What's going to be the easiest for me to see the text? The last option on here is show source formatting. It's not going to apply to this document, but if you had some text that included things like bold words or underlined words, you can toggle that on or off, whether or not you want to keep those bold or underlined words into your text. I don't have it in my document right now, so it's not going to matter, but that is an option. The next set of reading options that I have are the grammar options right here, these lines with a little magic wand in them. So if I click on the grammar options, now I can break down some grammar things inside of my document. The first is syllables. If I toggle this on or off, it will actually break my document, all the words in my document, into their syllables. And then I can also show different parts of speech, right? So we have nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. If I toggle on nouns, it's going to scan through my document, and anything that's a noun, it's going to make it red. If I turn on verbs, it'll make verbs purple, adjectives green, adverbs is kind of a lighter color purple. Now these are customizable, right? They do come with some default presets, but you can change them to be whatever you want to make those types of words stand out a little bit more, right? And then I can also show the labels. If I toggle that on, you'll notice in my document now all of those parts of speech that I've turned on, they get the little label above the word to tell me what type of part of speech it is. Now, one thing to just kind of be aware of, it does use some artificial intelligence to do this. So every now and again, it might get a word wrong, but for the most part, it's going to be extremely accurate, right? It's not wrong very often. And then my last set of options that I can toggle on are reading preferences. So if I click on that little book, there are some reading preferences that I have. The first option is line focus. So if I turn that on, that's going to be just like using a reading ruler. So it's going to kind of gray out all of the extra text. It's only going to highlight one line at a time. If I would turn on now my text to speech option, you'll notice as it reads, it moves the text through this box. So whatever text is currently being read is going to be inside of that. Now, if I don't want to have the text to speech option, I want to be able to read this on my own. I do have an up and a down arrow, so I can scroll through the document and the text that's in that line focus is going to change. The line focus itself doesn't move on the screen, the text moves behind it. I'm going to come back and click on my reading preferences. The default when you turn line focus on is just going to be one line of text, but I can also expand it to show 3 lines of text at a time, or depending on your font size, if your font is small enough, you might even be able to have the option to show 5 lines at a time. I'm going to turn that back off so we can get into our next feature, but the next feature is our picture dictionary. So if we toggle this on, nothing happens immediately on the screen, but now we turn on a picture dictionary. Most of the words that we're going to find in the document, if I click on them, we can end up seeing a picture that's going to try to help give us a definition of what that word is going to be, right? So it's going to try to show us what that word means. And then also when I click on the word, you'll notice that I get the little listen icon. So if I click on that, the text to speech is going to read that word for me. So if I come across a word that I'm not sure what it is, I don't know how to pronounce it, even if it's not included in the picture dictionary, I have the ability to listen to that word. But you can see most of the words that you're going to find in here will have a picture that goes along with it. And this has kind of greatly expanded here in the last couple of months, where more and more words now have the picture to go along with it. My next option is the translate option. Now inside of translating the Immersive Reader, there are a total of 63 different languages that we can pick from. I'm going to pick Spanish right here, but we have the ability to translate our document by word, or we can translate the entire document. First, I'm just going to click on Word. So now when I come across a word inside of my document, if I click on it, it's going to give me the English version of the word, but it's also going to give me the Spanish version of the word. And then I also have that listen option. So if I need the pronunciation of a word in a different language, that's going to exist there for me as well. So in order to see the translated version, I just have to click on the word. It's going to give me the English, and it's going to give me the Spanish version of it as well. I can also decide that I want to translate this by the entire document. So if I toggle that on, my entire document now is changed into Spanish. And then if you notice at the top of the screen, you have the option to switch back and forth between the Spanish version or the original version, the original English. So I can go back and forth. All right, this is going to be a great tool if you have somebody in one of your classrooms that's not a native English speaker. They struggle with English language. We can have the document probably in their native language and be able to toggle back and forth. right? So that is the translate option inside of the Immersive Reader. And again, the Immersive Reader here inside of the online version of Word, this is available on all free Office 365 accounts. So if you have a parent in your community that might benefit from this as well, they want to have some resources that they can use if their kids are at home, they can help out. They can sign up for those free Office 365 accounts and get access to the Immersive Reader. Microsoft wants to make this available to as many people as possible. Microsoft has even opened this up to some third-party vendors. And if other third parties want to add the Immersive Reader into their apps, they can do that at no cost. Microsoft wants to get this into the hands of as many people as possible. And we'll take a look at a few other apps that Microsoft has that includes the Immersive Reader. But right now, before I move on to the next version of the Immersive Reader that we're going to look at, are there any questions specifically that we should address right now?
None so far, Jace.
All right, perfect. All right, so I'm going to show you the Immersive Reader in a couple of other Microsoft tools. The next one that I'll show you is Microsoft Forms. Up here on the screen, I have a form that I've created. If I'm going to, teach online, I probably am going to have some tests or quizzes at some point in time. This would be a Chapter 2 test that I have created for my economics class. It's worth 36 points. This is what the view that the students are going to get. If I would create this assignment in something like Teams, for example, make it available for my students when they would take the quiz, this is what it's going to look like. And you'll notice if I hover over the top of a question, I get the little Immersive Reader icon that shows up right here. All right, so all I have to do is hover over a question, then click on the Immersive Reader icon, and it's going to send that specific question into the Immersive Reader. And then from here, I have the full options of the Immersive Reader. I can use text to speech. I can turn on any of my text preferences, my grammar options, my reading preferences. If I need to line focus a little bit, maybe I just need to have my choices made available for me if I need to have the screen read this to me. Maybe you had a para in your building that would do this for a student if they were taking a test in person, but now we don't have that option, but they still don't have to lose that ability, right? We can do that here with the text to speech option inside of Microsoft Forms. Another tool that does use the Immersive Reader is Microsoft Teams. I know we've had a lot of people that have moved to Microsoft Teams in the last week, trying to use this as a tool for some online or distance or virtual learning. We can take anything that's a conversation post in Teams or any chat message in Teams and send that to the Immersive Reader. So right now I'm going to hover over this conversation post inside of one of my Teams. I have the 3 dots that show up here. Again, anytime in Microsoft programs, it doesn't matter what the program is. If you see 3 dots, that means there's more options. If I click on it, it's going to give me more options of what I can do. One of the options that I have is to send that conversation post to the Immersive Reader. So I click on the link. It's going to send that specific conversation post into the Immersive Reader, again, where I have full capabilities of the Immersive Reader with the text to speech option, and then all of my reading preferences, grammar preferences, and text preferences available. Right, again, that can be done for any conversation post, or it can be done for any chat message inside of Microsoft Teams. And then I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint presentation very quickly. The last thing that I want to show you with the Immersive Reader is probably the most useful tool that you might find for the Immersive Reader, and that's going to be an app called Office Lens. Now, Office Lens is a mobile app. It's available for iOS and Android devices. Here again in the upper left-hand corner is the larger blow up of what the icon for that app looks like. Office Lens is for Microsoft and it's free, right? It's free to download. I want to just give you a quick demo of how it's going to work. I didn't trust my internet to do a live demo, so I have a bunch of screenshots here that I'll show you and walk you through it. But if I'd open up Office Lens now takes control of the camera on my phone. So right here, this is a page in a book, right? You can see very text heavy. Now, if I click on the little white button, it's going to snap the picture of that page of the book. Office Lens does kind of use some AI to make sure that it's going to get as clear of an image as possible for that document. From here, I do have some edit options. If I don't like the picture, I can just click on the trash can and make it go away entirely. I can click on this little square right here, and this becomes a crop feature. So I can kind of cut out some text that I didn't want. If I tried to take a picture of a page in a book, maybe I got some little end of text lines from the opposite page in that book, I can get rid of those. You can rotate the picture, you can put some text over the top of it, or you can draw over the top of it. But I like this picture, it's good enough. So I'm going to click done. And now I have the option of what I want to do with that picture. I can send this straight to my photo library and save it just like it's a regular picture on my camera. I can send it to OneNote, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. I think this is the best option that exists inside of Office Lens. Or down here at the bottom, you can see, and if you're doing this on your phone, you might have to scroll down a little bit to see it, but there's the Immersive Reader inside of Office Lens. So if you click on Immersive Reader, it's actually going to send that picture of that page in the book to the Immersive Reader. And then from here, I do have that text to speech option. I have those same settings I can kind of play with a little bit inside of here, where I can change the speed, toggle between a male or a female voice. But now my phone can automatically read that book to me. Or if you click on those three lines at the top of the page, you do have almost all of the same text preferences, grammar options, and reading preferences on your phone that you would have in the full version of the Immersive Reader. So you can still change the size of the font. You can still change the font, specifically what kind of font you want it to be. You still have the 21 different themes that you can pick from. You can still use syllables. You can show the parts of speech. You still have line focus options. You still have the translate options. That's all with inside of your phone. And I'm going to back this up a couple of slides. And the one other thing that I want to point out inside of this is, in this case, I just sent one page of a book to the Immersive Reader. If I have a book with 15 pages, I want to take all of chapter 1 in my US history book and send it to the Immersive Reader. I can take those 15 pictures, and if you click on this little arrow right here, this little arrow, it will actually bring up a list of all of the previous pictures that you've taken on your phone, and you can select which specific pages that you want to send on to the Immersive Reader. So you don't just have to do it one at a time. You can bulk send this. If I want to read a whole book, I can take a picture quickly of every page, and then using this button, I can select every page and send that whole thing to the Immersive Reader. The option that I think is still the best is taking a picture of something and sending it directly to OneNote. So I'm going to jump out of this. I'm going to go back to my web browser, and I'm going to use the online version of OneNote, right? You can also do this in the desktop version, but I'll stay in the online version just so it looks the same regardless of what device you're using. And we'll give this a second. I don't know why my picture decided it wanted to go away. Oh, there it comes back. All right, so this is the exact same picture that I was showing you on my phone with Office Lens. I took this picture with Office Lens and I sent it to OneNote. Right, when you send it to OneNote, you get to pick specifically which notebook you want it to go to, and then you can even pick which specific section in that notebook you want it to go to. So here's the page in my book. Now from here, inside of OneNote, if I click on the View tab and then click on Immersive Reader, now it's going to take that picture that I took with Office Lens on my phone, sent to OneNote. Now it turns that picture into the Immersive Reader. And then you can see this is the full version. I can have it read the document to me. And then I have all of those same text preferences, grammar options, or reading preferences that you'd have in the full version of the Immersive Reader. The one thing that I do kind of want to point out here is when you're taking the picture, and make sure it's a good quality picture, it's in focus, that your camera can actually see the words that are on the page. You might run into a little bit of a difficulty. I was trying to work with one of my daughter's books, and some of the text in the book was more of in a font that almost looked like handwriting. It struggles to recognize some of that. It does the best job it can. It uses some artificial intelligence to make this happen. So just know that there could be a little glitch. It might not look exactly perfect, but it's still a better option than probably just sitting to try and read this straight from a book. right? So you can do this here. I did it with a page in a book, but it can be any paper document. If you have a Word document that you've printed out, you can stamp a picture of it, and then you can send it to the Immersive Reader that way. One other note with Office Lens, most of the Microsoft products do have mobile versions that are available on iOS or Android, including OneNote, Word, OneDrive. All of those have Office Lens built into it. So if I would open up the mobile OneNote application, there's going to be the ability for me to insert a picture. And then I have the option if I want to insert a picture that's already on my phone, or I can take a picture of something and bring that directly into OneNote. That actually uses Office Lens. So all of these same capabilities are going to be there by skipping that Office Lens mode and going straight into my OneNote document. All right, so that's the last stuff that I have for you on Office Lens. Before I move into our next tool, Rob, any questions that you've seen that have come up, things that we need to talk about or show again?
No, but everybody's doing pretty good, Jace.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to stay inside of my online version of OneNote just for ease purposes. I'm going to click on my next section right here, which is Dictate. All right, one other tool that could be really valuable for you and some of your students is speech to text. We've looked at some text to speech options with the Immersive Reader, but it's always difficult to get that speech to text platform built in. I mean, many of you are probably familiar with programs like Dragon Natural Speaking. It costs a couple of $100. You get it, and then you got to spend half a day reading pages out of a book so the program can understand how you speak, what your voice patterns are, what your voice itself sounds like. That way it can try to be as accurate as possible. Many Office tools have this feature built in already, and there's no setup that's actually required for it, right? So inside of my OneNote, on the Home tab, right? And the Home tab is the default tab whenever you open up that program. My very last option right here is Dictate. So if I click on Dictate, OneNote's actually going to take control of the microphone on my computer. And now all I have to do is start talking, and it's going to take my speech and turn it into written text on the document. Now, there are some limitations to this. You have to be sort of close to the microphone to make it work. It's all going to be based off of how well you enunciate and the volume at which you're speaking, but it does a pretty good job of getting things right. You know, you probably have a student that has really great thoughts, but they have an extremely hard time getting something on paper to get started. This is a great option. Now I can just start talking, my ideas are flowing, and then I have the ability to later to go back in, take a look at the text, and kind of clean things up. It is going to make some mistakes based off of, you know, how well I'm speaking, how fast or slow, but it's going to get pretty close. One other limitation that goes along with it is some grammar things or punctuation specifically are going to be kind of tough. I can start talking and then say period, and it will try to put a period there for me. Not perfect, but again, this is a great way to at least get started. Now I have something on paper. I can go back and I can modify this. I can change it. If I'm writing a book report or a research paper, this is a great way for me to at least get started with this. All I have to do to turn it off is click on Dictate again. It turns off. It gives me back control of the microphone, and now it's not adding anything else in for me. Right? Again, this is in the online version of OneNote. It's in the online version of Word, but it's also in the desktop versions of those programs as well. And there are some extra features that you can use with Dictate. Underneath my Dictate, I have the little drop-down menu. If I click on it, I can pick the language that I'm speaking in. Right now, if you don't do anything, the default is English. But if I'm left English as my language and I start to speak a different language, it's going to pick that up and it's still going to be pretty accurate. But if you know you have a student that's maybe going to be speaking in Spanish and using the dictate option, they can turn on Spanish, and this will just try to make it a little bit more accurate. That way, the program knows that it's specifically listening for Spanish speech, and it's going to try to translate a little closer. You don't have to do that, but it's probably best practice. There are some preview languages. You guys might not see all of these quite yet, but I know Microsoft is working to add more and more languages into this dictate feature. Right. So again, this is available in OneNote, Word, Outlook has dictate available for it as well. So you can dictate an email. You don't actually have to type that out. Right. But that's a great tool to get speech to text without costing you any extra money or having to do any serious setup to make it work. All right, the next tool that I'll show you, I'm going to stay inside of the online version of OneNote again. OneNote does have some math tools that are built in. If you have kids that struggle with math, OneNote maybe can help out a little bit. So I'm going to click on my math section. I'm going to click on my first math page. And now here I do have a math problem drawn onto the screen. I'm lucky enough that I have a touchscreen computer, so it's easy for me to do that. I just write my math problem onto the page. If you don't have that option, you can use the keyboard to do it. You can just try to type in the math problem, but if you ever tried to type math problems as text into OneNote or a Word document, it's probably a little tough to do. It doesn't always recognize some of the math symbols that you're going to use. So it's easiest if you can draw it. But inside of OneNote, if I click on the Draw tab, my last option is Math, right? If I don't do anything else on my page and I click on Math, you're going to get a little pop that tells you how to get started with the Math option, right? It will give you some instructions on how that you can use this. It's going to tell me I got to write out my equation, then select it, and then tap Math again, and then it's going to be able to do some stuff for me. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to close out this tab. I'm going to highlight my entire math problem. And then now I'm going to click Math. You'll notice that it took my handwritten math problem and now it turned it into typed text. If for some reason, my penmanship was sloppy, OneNote didn't understand what my problem was supposed to be, you do have the fix it option. So you can go back in and you can modify the problem and actually make it correct. Maybe my X looked too much like a plus sign and OneNote didn't know what I was doing. You do have the fix it option. You also have the ink to math option, right? So now I hand wrote in my problem. If I click on ink to math, inside of my document, it actually took that handwritten text and now it turned it into typed text. So maybe you want to use this to plan or to generate an assignment for your students. You can handwrite this stuff and then you can turn it into plain text. So it's going to be a little bit easier for your students to read. I want to leave mine as the handwritten text, so I'm going to hit the undo button and take it back. But the next feature is probably the biggest feature inside of OneNote, right? Underneath my math box, I do have select an action. So if I click on that, I have the option where I can graph out this problem, but I also have the ability to solve for X. So if I click on solve for X, OneNote's actually going to do my math for me, right? So now it gives me the answer to my question. That's great. I know what the answer is, but how did we get to that answer? Well, OneNote can also show you that as well. So underneath that, now I have show steps. So I'm going to show the steps for solving the linear equation. Now it gives me the entire process of how it got to that correct answer, right? So if you have a student at home that maybe struggles a little bit with math, but they don't have somebody else in their house that's going to be able to help them, they can't get in touch with you all the time to get the help that they need, OneNote can try to provide some of that help. And then you'll notice I also have the Immersive Reader button that shows up. I can send this walkthrough of the program into the Immersive Reader. So if I struggle reading out of that little box, I can send it here. Maybe this will help make it a little bit more clear and easier for me to understand. And then the last option that I have here in the math is underneath my steps for solving the equation. I now have a button that says generate a practice quiz. If I click on that button, OneNote is actually going to access Microsoft Forms. It's going to ask me how many questions I want. The default is 3. I'm going to leave it as 3, and I'm going to click on Generate Quiz. Now, embedded into my OneNote page, I have a practice math quiz. Right? Microsoft Forms used this initial problem that I wrote down here, and through some artificial intelligence, it came up with 3 other math problems that are of a similar style. It turned them into this form. So now this becomes a practice for me. This is just a practice There is no way for the teacher to see this. This document is created and it lives inside of the student's OneDrive account. And then you could have this as an assignment, generate the practice quiz, and then maybe take a screenshot of it for me so I can have some evidence that you did this and some evidence of learning. But in order to answer the questions, again, you notice I have the Immersive Reader button that shows up. I can send each of these individual questions to the Immersive Reader, or I can just select my answers and then click Submit. It says, thanks, my response is spinning. Now I can see how I did. Well, I got 2 out of 3 right. Not bad for guessing, right? So it tells me the question, shows me the correct answer. I got those 2 right. This one I got wrong. Now I can maybe go back and I can rework this one a little bit to figure out, what I did wrong, right? So this becomes that great practice tool. Now the type of math problem I put in here was, pretty simple algebra. It can be problems as easy as simple addition and subtraction, multiplication, division, all the way to some more calculus-based math problems, right? So it does have a wide range of different types of math that it can help with. Right, so that's math inside of OneNote Online. Right now, I am going to jump out quick to the OneNote Windows 10 desktop app. Right, the desktop app has the same functionality. As you can see right now, it's working on pasting in that practice quiz that I just got done taking. But I want to show you one other feature. And unfortunately, right now, this is only in the Windows 10 desktop app. It doesn't exist anywhere else. But I'm going to click on my second math page. I'm going to delete out my previous text here. But if I click on the Insert tab, right now, again, this is the Windows 10 desktop app for OneNote. If I click on Insert, I still have that Math tab. This is going to give me the same options that I had in the online version of OneNote, where it can take my handwritten problem and turn it into typed text that will solve my equation for me. It will show me the steps, and it can generate that quiz for me. But I also now have this equation button. If I click on equation, now this is probably something that's going to be more useful for you as a teacher if you want to create a document that you're going to be able to push out to your students. If you click on the equation button, now it's going to give me some math tools that are going to help me to create my math problem. Again, if you've ever tried to type a math equation into something like OneNote or Word, the computer keys that you would use to type out the problem sometimes don't always work very well. But we're going to get some better options inside of here. If I click on symbols, it's going to give me some basic math symbols that I can use that probably don't exist anywhere on a keyboard or are going to be extremely hard to find. But I also have some structure things that I can do here. So I can go to fractions, for example. Fractions are really tough to add into a document. Now this is going to build those in for me. Or if I need to do like some square roots or things like that, it's going to give you that basic structure to create some more complex math problems that you can send to your students. Right? So it'll help kind of clean up that process a little bit. Any questions that you guys have on the other OneNote tools, Dictate or the math options?
Just following along and listening good, Jace. No questions.
All right, so right now I'm going to jump back to PowerPoint. I have one final tool that I want to show you. So I'm going to go back to my original PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to click on the slideshow tab. I'm showing you this again in the online version of PowerPoint. It's the easiest to use in the online version. You will have this feature in the desktop version of PowerPoint, but there are some more hoops that you have to jump through in order to make it work. But inside of PowerPoint, again, the online version, if I click on slideshow, I have the always use subtitles button, right? If you click on it, now it becomes kind of grayed out. It's got that gray border around it. That means it's turned on. Now from here, if I would play my slideshow, it's actually going to add subtitles to my PowerPoint presentation, right? So this is going to be a great tool if you're in the classroom with your students, but you can also use it here if you're using Microsoft Teams to do some virtual online learning. You're sharing your screen for a class meeting that you have a PowerPoint presentation up there. You can turn on the subtitles. Maybe it's going to be a little bit easier for students to follow along. Maybe students have some audio issues at their house. You don't know what kind of speakers they're going to have for their computer, or if they're working on their phone, what else is going on in their house at the time. So the subtitles is a nice feature that you can turn on. To turn off subtitles, I just have to exit the slideshow presentation. If I click on the button again, it doesn't have that gray border around it anymore. Now the subtitles have been turned off, right? So you can toggle those on and off. The other nice feature with subtitles, next to it, I have the little drop-down menu, the little upside-down triangle. I can click on that, and I have some options. Number one, spoken language. I can change the language for PowerPoint so it knows what I'm speaking. Again, the default is English, so it knows that I'm speaking English, and it's going to turn the written subtitles into English for me. If I would start speaking in a different language, it will recognize that, and it will make the change without me having to specifically change my language. But again, if you're going to speak Spanish, for example, you could click on this, and now it will just try to be a little bit more accurate. It's going to be able to follow along a little bit better. But the extra feature is, what language do you want your subtitles to be in? Right? Maybe you have a student in your classroom that's not a native English speaker. They speak primarily Spanish. In order to help them out, you can turn subtitles on using Spanish, right? So now in my presentation, I'm going to be speaking English, but the subtitles will now show up in Spanish, right? So that non-native English speaker, we can turn the subtitles into their native language to give them a better opportunity to follow along. This would be another great tool to use. Maybe you're having parent-teacher conferences and that student's parents don't speak English at all. You can turn subtitles on to whatever their native language is, and they can follow along and understand what you are saying to them. Right inside of this right now, there's not a great way for them to talk back, but there are options with tools like Microsoft Translate that you can get that conversation going back and forth. But it's really easy to do just by picking, what language you want your subtitles to be in. You can specify a little bit more to make this be the best for your students. And then you can also change the location of the subtitles. I picked below slide, so it's not going to cover up anything that's on my slide. You can have it be on the bottom of your slide, but overlaid. So inside of that slide itself, you would find the subtitles. You could put it over the top of the subtitles, right? But you have that option as well, right? So that's another great tool that you can use for some of your students. All right, I guess, are there any questions? Things that you guys want to see more of?
None posted on the chat. People can unmute your mics and share a question with Jace if you have any.
Yep, feel free to speak up, ask any questions that you have. Again, I'll put this slide up here for you. If you would like to make sure I can give you credit for attending this, go to this bit.ly. It's going to be a Microsoft form. It's just going to ask you for your name, your K-12 email address, and your school, so I can make sure I get the right person entered into our database. I'll actually scroll back through this meeting and I'll find all the attendees and I'll try to match up those lists. So if you don't have an opportunity to get to this form today, or if the form isn't working for you, I'll still be able to find your name. I want to give credit for as many people as possible for being a part of this today. I do have a couple of other resources that I'll leave up here on the screen for you. The first resource is a SWAY presentation that we put together, bit.ly/ms-learning tools, capital L and capital T. That's a SWAY presentation that contains a bunch of screenshots for all of the things that I walked you through today. So if you want to go back and you want to take a deeper dive or look into some of the tools, or if you forget how to use these when you come back to them on Monday, you can go to that SWAY presentation and you can see screenshots of how to do all of this stuff. The one nice thing with the Sway is this is a live link. It's always going to take you to the most up-to-date version of the Sway. I realized when I did this webinar this morning that Sway wasn't correct. So immediately after I got off the call, I went in and I changed a couple of screenshots. And if you have the link, you automatically saw those updates. You don't have to go back and get a new share link. You don't have to reload a document. Those things are just going to be there for you automatically. And then I've also put in the CETA website here, so you can go in and you can check out the partner resources they have available for you, or some of the accessibility features that they have that they're sharing with you as well. Yeah, so again, thank you for attending the webinar. As always, we're here to assist you in being successful. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. This is the email address for our help desk. You can send them a message if You come into some problems with something that you're trying to work on. If you need support, if you need some help with a virtual training inquiry, you can send that information here. You can also send something directly to me through email. You can message me on Teams. We're here to help as much as possible. I'll stay on this call for a while. If you guys have any questions, feel free to turn on your microphones and ask away. If not, thank you for being with us today.